A light rain night on the roof of Summerlin Hospital, the monitor went beep, beep, as if reminding me to breathe evenly. The postpartum room door opened. My husband's family surged in with a man carrying a briefcase, the hallway lights casting a chill on the thick-edged papers. "You're just a surrogate. The baby belongs to us," they said, voices flat like a blade. I held my child closer, her skin warm like a small lamp in a room that smelled of antiseptic. The nurse on duty documented the dispute and activated a newborn custody hold per protocol. The hospital's legal department was notified immediately during the shift. I am Maya, and right then I understood. There are nights you cannot cry. You can only stand tall by your own name. I said, tired but clear, "I am the mother of my child. No one has the right to take the baby." They thought everything would be covered by a file stamped sealed. They were wrong. Nevada has laws, and justice always finds a way to unlock the truth. 15 minutes later, while I could still hear the light rain outside the window, the court signed a temporary protective order, keeping both mother and child safe. The order was sent directly to the hospital, stating clearly, "Do not separate the baby from the biological mother until the court reviews." But I knew the real battle would take place at Clark County Family Court, where an envelope would be opened before the public, and a line on paper would return the correct name to the one who is the mother. I tell this story not to boast of victory, but to extend my hand to those being pushed out of the frame of their child's life. Sometimes, you don't need to panic. You need to be calm, read slowly, sign smart, and set your heart beside the right clause. This is Revenge and Resolve, where cracks become pathways. If you believe the truth always finds a way, stay till the end. Please subscribe. Hit like so the story reaches those who need it, and comment "Unseal" if you want to see how the court unseals that envelope. Thank you for being here, for lending me your eyes and heart from the very first minute. Mornings in the small apartment in the Arts District always begin with the espresso machine purring like a sleeping cat, the smell of dark roasted coffee blending with the scent of pine wood from the studio corner I built myself in the garage. In the distance, the I-15 pours a steady low hum, like a backing beat for a city that refuses to turn off its lights. I am Maya, a photographer. Weddings, portraits. Someone who has learned to read Nevada's sunlight with the naked eye. The early light at Red Rock has a thin chill, like a shawl lightly laid over the shoulders. By noon, the sun pours straight down, scorching even the shadows. I like to wake before dawn, throw on a denim jacket, slip a few SD cards into my pocket, carry a still hot-to-go cup from Starbucks and drive to the foot of the Red Rocks. When the sun peaks up, the camera clicks in steady beats, and everything on my chest settles. The desert wind is parching but truthful, and the feeling of coming home arrives very lightly. From wiping the lens, hanging the backdrop roll, checking the lights, to when my back touches the cool wall of the garage and I know I still love the job like the first day. I met Carter at a wedding at the Bellagio, the Chichili ceiling blazing like a rain of glass, champagne, laughter shattering across the marble floor. He helped me carry the light case, asked if I needed medical tape for my wrist because the camera was heavy, then smiled a kind of Vegas charming, a smile that makes you forget you're on the clock shooting. We set a coffee date in downtown, a small shop, warm lights, lo-fi indie music breathing like a warm breath. He handed me tickets to the Golden Knights, said go feel the noise. I nodded, also to see whether the cheering could make me hear less of the way I scold myself. On evenings like that, I took photos with my phone when the arena lights changed, photos of me when I smiled with crinkled eyes, and we were just that, Two young people believing a life could be simple with a late tacos dinner and beautiful pictures. Then I stepped over the threshold of the Whitfield house. They have a resort in Henderson, a ballroom blazing bright, their name appearing at every gala from Bellagio to Wynn. For them, the family image is a kind of religion. Frames along the corridor aligned like a procession, smiles rehearsed as carefully as dance moves. I tried to set the camera down, yet still found myself framing. Who stands in the middle? Who steps half a pace back? The gaze tilted 15 degrees to look cleaner. I thought of my mother, the one who counted every coin so I could buy my first camera, and reminded myself to keep the name Maya in every line of credit, even when they said, "It's just family photos." On a cool Henderson evening, I went to dinner at the Palmetto, the Whitfield family's resort. A long table, lights like honey. Evelyn, my future mother-in-law, laid a hand on the chair beside me, her voice gentle but sharp like the rim of a crystal glass. "Maya, to enter the Whitfield house is to enter history, don't tarnish it." I smiled, took a glass of water instead of wine, and spoke slowly so I wouldn't lose myself. I respect history, and I also safeguard my own story. On ordinary days, I still move between those two worlds like that. Morning, espresso, and Red Rock. Noon in downtown with the stream of people passing by to the rhythm of the lights. Afternoon in a garage that smells of pine wood and the cameras click, repeating. Evening at an overly bright dinner table, and questions that seem friendly but want to push someone into the right box. I choose small details to anchor myself, labeling SD cards, handwriting clients' names on photo envelopes, snapping a behind-the-scenes shot just to remember the moment someone exhaled in relief. I told Carter while we were packing up, "I want a family, not a wall." He hugged me, said, "Okay," like a promise still vague. And I, with the slowed-down rhythm of life in the desert, learned to believe in things you can hold. The residual warmth on the camera body after a set. The smell of coffee rising before the sky has lightened, my own hand squeezing myself when needed, and the words I will read aloud if anyone tries to write it differently. I am Maya, the photographer, the one learning how to be a mother, and the one still placing my name neatly in every frame. Family dinner at a steakhouse in Henderson began with the clinking of knives and forks like a metronome, while I sat in the middle of the glossy long table, listening to my heart try to keep steady against the smell of hot butter and black pepper. After the wedding, I realized people talked about legacy more than about happiness. Evelyn smiled gently but sharply, raised her glass. "To the future of the Whitfield family." I smiled, my hand closed around a glass of water. Carter's phone buzzed once and then went dead, the screen face down like a lid. I sent him a simple message, IVF at 9 a.m. tomorrow. But the word delivered sat still, cold. Amid the chatter, I heard another sound, small and persistent, the feeling of being placed outside the center of my own story. The next day at the IVF office, the space was bright white, the printer hissing softly like mist. Dr. Shah sat across from me, her voice warm and clear. "The decision-making belongs to the two of you. I need informed consent from both Maya and Carter." I nodded, signed my part after reading every line. Carter didn't come. The assistant called him, the phone rang and then fell into silence. I covered the gap by placing my hand on my belly. Nothing had happened yet, but I needed to remind myself, this is my body. This is the road I walk. When I went to the payment desk, the cashier handed me an envelope labeled medical expenses. I flipped it open. The payer of record was SLF Holdings. I knew that was the Whitfield family company. The neat line of letters clicked shut like a small lock across my mouth. I took the envelope, smiled a little in thanks, and took it home like carrying a big question mark. At the Whitfield house, the printer kept spitting out paper, one sheet at a time. Evelyn pinched them up and set them in front of me. I need copies of all the forms, filed properly. In Nevada, the law is everything. The words flowed smooth as honey but left a sticky streak. I looked straight ahead, my voice small but firm. I signed my part, no blind signing. She pressed her lips together. Sloane, my sister-in-law, leaned against the doorway, smirking. The baby will be a perfect PR performance. She spoke low but sharp. The brand has to be absolutely clean. If we call it surrogacy, then all medical decisions are on our side. Less PR mess. The word performance stabbed into me like a pin. I gathered the papers, put them in order, penciled on the margins. Date, contents, recipient. When no one was looking, I snapped quick photos of each page on my phone. The printer went ket with another sheet. A small sound, but repeated long enough it becomes a beat. At the next IVF appointment, Carter's phone was off again. I sat alone in the waiting room, listening to the background music pound so insistently I wanted to take it apart to ease the tension. I typed, "I need you to be there," then deleted it and left only, "Reminder, 9 a.m. The door opened. Evelyn walked in with her rehearsed smile, demanded to come along, and carried a staple packet of temporary medical authorization. "I'll handle it quickly for you," she said like a favor. I shook my head, kept my voice level. "I'll handle it myself." When she left the room, Dr. Shah set a light hand on the edge of the table. "Maya, no one signs these decisions in your place. When Carter arrives, we'll sign together." I exhaled, thanked her. Kindness is sometimes just a sentence that puts a person back in the right place. That night in the Arts District apartment, I opened the SLF Holdings envelope under the kitchen light. The smell of dark roasted coffee still hung in the air. I read the word payer one more time, listened to the I-15 murmur like a dark current. A text from Carter. "Finished meetings, fell asleep. Talk tomorrow." I held the phone, let the screen glow in my palm, then set it down. The red flags in my life aren't red. They're gray, silent, polite, wrapped in pretty paper and words. I filed everything into a plastic folder, labeled it IVF consent, and marked the spots I needed to ask the doctor about. Early the next morning, I drove out to Red Rock. The sun had just lifted. The camera clicked once, and I stood very still among the red stone, letting the desert wind dry the layer of fear in my chest. There are things I can't change immediately, but I can slow down, write things down, and keep my name on every line. I sent myself an invisible message. Don't let anyone turn you into a PR performance. You are you. Then I got back in the car, slipped the SD card into my pocket, ready for a day I knew would bring more paperwork, more gentle smiles, and one more time I would speak softly but clearly. I signed my part. No blind signing. Afternoon in the Arts District apartment, the email ping popped and made me startle, dropping the lens cap. The subject line on the screen, "Surrogacy Agreement, Final Copy." I opened it. A blurry PDF, a strange notary seal, the doctor's signature, as if it had been pasted on. My heart slowed the way it does when on guard. I pulled up a chair, switched on the desk lamp, printed 2 copies. The ink was still warm on my hand when the lobby mailbox also notified me there was mail. I ran down, opened the box, pulled out a bank envelope. A wire compensation transferred into my account. Note, gestational services. I called the bank to request an unconditional hold on this amount and flag it disputed, so it could not be used as a trap to define me on paper. Even though I had never agreed to be a surrogate, I stood still in the hallway. The smell of envelopes and paper dust suddenly thickened, as if someone had pulled a curtain down across my neck. I called Zoe. She sped over, hugging her laptop like a shield. "Do you see this notary stamp?" Zoe pointed to the right corner. "Clark County is correct, but the doctor's signature is a printed font. There are no pen strokes." She set the printout on the table, tilted it near the light to inspect. The embossed area didn't bite into the paper like usual. I swallowed dryly, my stomach tightening and then releasing. "They transferred money into my account," I whispered, "to turn me into a surrogate on paper." Zoe pulled her chair closer, her voice low but firm. "Money is bait, not definition. Save the statements. We'll return the money later, but we have to keep a ledger of the cash flow." That night, I went to the Whitfield house for an intimate wine tasting. The cellar was cool as stone, oak-scented and dark. In the corner, a photocopier sat ready, its screen blinking green. Sloan talked PR upstairs, and I, amid the beep of the machine shooting each page, heard only another beat, the beat of paper multiplying its own story. Evelyn smiled, set her slender hand on the stack of files. "Maya, everything needs to be proper. Sign here." I looked down and saw the title Surrogacy Agreement again, the intended parents box without my name. I looked up, gave a thin smile. "I don't sign what I haven't read from the source." Her gaze slid over like the edge of a cooled blade. I excused myself to go upstairs, to call Carter, but in fact to note the time, 22:47, the photocopier running, the page count rising, the file name showing Final Scan to 2. The next morning in the hospital parking lot, the early wind scraped the skin like sandpaper. I met Dr. Shah right before the appointment. We opened the trunk, spread the documents on the lid like a makeshift field table. She put on her glasses and read each page very slowly. "This document was not issued by the clinic," she said clearly, placing her finger on the faint copied logo. "And your record is IVF with Maya's egg, Carter's sperm. Standard intended parents, Maya and Carter." I thanked her, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. Dr. Shah photographed the questionable pages and wrote a line of confirmation in blue pen on the department's letterhead. "Records reviewed. No surrogacy contract issued by clinic." The steady slant of her handwriting was like a pillar holding up the sky. At noon, Zoe sent me a clip from the Ring camera outside the Whitfield garage. She had dug it up through the guest sharing section. A black and white frame, 3 a.m. Evelyn pushing the side door, carrying a thick stack of documents, an extra envelope tucked under her arm. She went straight down to the cellar. I scrubbed back and forth, feeling my heartbeat change pace with each of her steps. No interpretation needed. The image speaks. Time speaks. People speak for themselves through what they do when they think no one is watching. In the afternoon, I opened my laptop. The inbox pinged with another email, a maternity insurance copy, in the name of SLF Holdings, CC'd to the family legal department. I gathered everything: the blurry PDF, the strange notary stamp, the compensation wire, the account statements, Dr. Shah's confirmation, the 3 a.m. ring clip, and lined them up in a straight row like stones laid across a stream. I labeled the edges: A, blurry contract; B, statements and wire; C, clinic confirmation; D, ring clip; E, insurance email. In the Whitfield photocopier, the beep might drown out my voice. But here, the email, ping, the rip of envelopes, the printer feeding paper, they were all harmonizing. The score swelled, not to frighten me, but to make me remember. When the truth is smudged, I bring the light closer. I poured a glass of water, placed my hand on my belly, and spoke softly to my child and to myself. I will open every envelope until the paperwork reads the right name. The birth night began with the monitor's beep, speeding up like someone knocking from inside my chest. The antiseptic smell crept into my throat. White light poured through the curtain. The hallway floor was so cold, I remember exactly where my feet had just touched. The nurse whispered, "Deep breath. Breathe evenly." Hurried footsteps outside collided with each other like little waves. I heard my baby's cry break out, fragile yet clear. And then everything suddenly changed color when Evelyn pushed the door open, her coat still speckled with rain, slamming a thick, sealed, stamped file onto the nurse's desk. "She is only a gestational carrier," she said, each word hard as the edge of glass. "Per the contract, hand the baby over to the family." I clenched the bedsheet until my knuckles whitened. A nurse looked at me, her eyes flashing a question she didn't dare speak. Carter stood in the doorway, face stunned like someone who had just gotten lost between two rooms. "Mom, maybe we should," he faltered. I turned my head, keeping my voice from shaking. "Are you the father or an accomplice?" In that moment, time seemed to fall to the floor, shattering into tiny pieces. I saw my baby's wristband, a tiny white strip, being carefully adjusted by the nurse. I felt my hand touch my baby's skin, so warm it made me want to cry. Then the guard's shoes stopped at the door, and the charge nurse's voice was low but firm. "There is a legal dispute. Activate a temporary hold. The baby stays in the nursery. The mother stays with the baby if condition allows." I nodded, not because I understood all the terminology, but because I heard what mattered. The baby wasn't being taken anywhere, not by a swing of a file. Evelyn tried to push in, pointing at the red seal, calling it the law. But here, the law begins with a mother's arms and with the procedures the hospital knows by heart. Verify, protect, then decide. I called Aaliyah, my attorney, between two breaths. Her voice alone was a warm blanket. "Listen to me, Maya," she said, quick but steady. "We'll file an emergency protective order right now, along with a motion for the court to review the validity of the sealed contract. Ask the nurse to note in the chart. Biological mother objects to separation, requests rooming in." I closed my eyes, repeating each step like memorizing a breathing exercise. Aaliyah emailed the on-call team and called the court clerk directly. On my phone screen, I saw attachments pop into the inbox, the pages we had prepared over many weeks flagging one another, genetic tests, the IVF schedule with my and Carter's signatures, the doctor's confirmation letter. "You've done your part," Aaliyah said. "Let the words do the rest." Out in the hallway, Nevada rain tapped steadily on the glass roof. The nursery cast a band of warm light and the silhouettes of tiny cribs. The nurse brought the baby close, let me press cheek to cheek, and whispered, "Mama, are you okay?" I nodded, tears rising for the first time, not from fear but from knowing someone was reading my name the right way. Carter stepped a half step closer. His eyes met mine, hesitating as if the apology he wanted to say was stuck between his teeth. I didn't scold. I only said, just loud enough, "If you are the father, stand with the truth." Behind him, Evelyn tightened the strap of her bag, about to speak, but the charge nurse politely invited her to wait out in the hallway for a notice from legal. A rare quiet settled over the room, as calm as the moment between two heartbeats. 15 minutes stretched like a whole lifetime. Then the nurse's phone rang, a temporary protective order from the court, approved. I heard myself exhale, my shoulders drop as if someone had lifted a stone. "Do not separate the baby from the biological mother for now, pending a hearing to review the contract," the nurse read. Evelyn froze. Carter's hand fell from the water bottle. I looked at my child and murmured, We are here. Security stepped back. The nursery door closed softly like a breath. Aaliyah texted a final line. Family court tomorrow. Get some rest. Bring the originals. We'll let the court open the envelope. I put away the phone, set it on my chest, then laid my hand over my baby's hand. The hospital sounds returned. The monitor steadier. Footsteps no longer echoing. The rain easing. If anyone asks where my strength came from that night, I will say, from calling the right name for myself, the right name for my child, and the right names on the papers. From daring to ask a question that seems cruel but saves a conscience. Are you the father or an accomplice? And from the way a nursery door opened not because of anyone's power, but because a protective order was signed in time, placing the two of us back in our rightful place. In the morning, I went to Aaliyah Brooks's office, the room smelling of new paper and printer ink, the swish, swish of pages being flipped sounding like a rehearsed breath. The low background music, a light bass, kept me from rushing too fast into anger. Aaliyah pushed a red folder toward me, her voice firm and warm. In Nevada, the law on parentage is very clear. If anyone alters or manufactures documents, we ask to unseal and cross-check from the source, especially the chain of custody of the embryo. I nodded. We lined up the evidence like arranging chess pieces. The IVF schedule, the doctor's confirmation letter, a copy of the protective order, and all the envelopes I hadn't thrown away these past weeks. Maya, Aaliyah put her hand on the folder. You don't have to argue with your voice. You just need to let the real papers stand upright. We stopped by the lab. From the hallway, the sound of the centrifuge carried like a small drum, steady and sure. Riley Ung, the technician, put on gloves, opened the electronic records cabinet and printed a single page, laying it on the stainless steel table. Here, Embryo Dish ID WFT-332, the cross-reference map clearly states Maya Hernandez and Carter Whitfield. Barcode scans, timestamps, 3 layers of shift signatures. It cannot be Sloane's. I looked at the strings of numbers and letters and felt my back loosen a notch. And the surrogacy contract they produced? I asked. Riley shook his head. The lab doesn't issue that. Your medical record says intended parents, Maya and Carter. Everything from embryo to transfer is under these names. Aaliyah photographed the record, tucked it into the Exhibit B folder, and wrote a short line. Embryo provenance confirmed. In the afternoon, I met Boone, a private investigator, at the Red Rock parking lot. The desert wind whipped lightly across my face, carrying the smell of sun and dust. Boone set a large printout on my car hood, his finger tapping twice on the notary seal. The notary on that surrogacy contract died 2 years ago. The seal is a reused scan. There's even the source file from when they cut and pasted. I asked what I was supposed to do with a truth this cold. Boone shrugged, but his eyes weren't cold. Just bring it into the light. The rest is up to the court. I tilted my face up for a second, watching a streak of sunlight slide over the red rock crest, suddenly calm like when I set the camera on a tripod. Everything will fall back into the right frame. On the way back, my phone buzzed. Dr. Shah asked me to stop by. She opened a drawer and took out the original consent with the signatures we had placed back in the days when we were still full of hope. I signed this, she said slowly. The one they're holding is fake. And here, she handed over another set of papers. The draft of the pre-birth parentage order they never filed. If they truly respected the process, this would have been at the court long ago. Aaliyah looked at me, then nodded as if pressing save. Exhibits C and D. In the evening, the Arts District apartment was as quiet as a darkroom, only the sound of cars on the I-15 stretching into a thin strip. I set 4 folders on the table. A, Invalid notary seal. B. Embryo map WFT-332. C. Original consent with signatures. D. The draft that should have been filed. I changed my habit, not seeing them as weapons but as milestones so I wouldn't get lost. Aaliyah texted, "Tomorrow, ask the court to unseal and cross-check item by item. Read slowly, answer briefly, and always call your own name correctly." I replied, "Understood?" Inhaled 4 counts, exhaled 4 counts, then wrote in my notebook, "No one can alter medical history. No one can change the mother's name off the child with a blurry PDF." Out there, the desert still blew its wind. I thought of my child. The tiny scratch of a fingernail, the warmth that breathed onto my neck that night in the NICU, and I saw clearly one simple thing. They didn't just want the baby, they wanted to erase me from history. I will not shout. I will open the envelopes. I will point to each line, each timestamp, each signature. And when the judge asks, "Who are the legal parents?" I will lay my hand on the Exhibit B folder and say just enough. Embryo Dish ID WFT-332, Maya Hernandez and Carter Whitfield. Then I will be silent, leaving the rest to the seals to speak. Week 6 postpartum, Henderson slips into a gentle fall, the desert wind less harsh, and the grass in the park greening as if someone had just swapped in a soothing filter for the whole town. In the morning, I wear the baby against my chest and walk around the little lake. Each step is a 4-count inhale, a 4-count exhale, hearing the guitar of a guy practicing murmur softly from a wooden bench. The little girl nuzzles her cheek into my shirt, lets out a perfectly round yawn, and I learn to carry without hunching my back, to hold with my whole body so my back won't hurt and my heart will wobble less. The mom-baby yoga class at the community center on the corner opens early. I roll out a mat, lay the baby on a thin blanket, bend down to say, "Hello," with a glancing kiss on her forehead. The instructor says, "Breathe in, thinking of a safe place." I smile because that place now has a small face looking at me. The background music is a warm guitar, a wordless refrain that makes my shoulders lighter every time I change poses. After class, we stop by a cafe. I rock the stroller and open my laptop, retouching the unfinished wedding photos. The light on the screen is as gentle as milk, every freckle on the bride's face appearing and reminding me I am still the Maya of the lens, meticulous, steady, and knowing when to stop, so the picture can breathe on its own. At noon, while the baby sleeps, I log into Know Your Rights, an online course on basic family rights. I don't try to speak complicatedly. I learn to read slowly the simple things. Whose name must go where? Which signature has value? What counts as real paperwork? I jot notes in a yellow notebook. Chain of custody log, medical record, read aloud, answer briefly. Aaliyah comes on quiet afternoons, holds the baby for me, then sets a chair in the kitchen like a small platform to practice testifying. She taps a rhythm on the tabletop. Look at the question, pause 1 beat, state the facts. Don't apologize for telling the truth. I repeat, awkward at first, then hear my voice slow down, rounder, no longer cracking on the words court, order, record. Boone drops by with a whiteboard strung with colored cord. He draws threads connecting the birth date, the filing date, the time the Ring camera recorded, the time the blurry contract email was sent. The timeline unfurls, and I stand looking at it like studying a path in the sand. Before, I only saw storm. Now, I see direction. Riley at the lab prints the chain of custody log, each barcode scan, each shift signature. The paper comes out still warm. The printers hum like the heartbeat of a heart that has calmed. I clip them into a folder, mark A, B, C in pencil, and tuck them into the drawer next to the baby's robe. In the late afternoon, I go back to the park. We sit under the shade of a tree, sunlight falling into dots on my child's cheeks. I read her short lines of poetry, not because she understands words, but because I want my voice to be soft on the final sounds. At night, when the city settles, I open Lightroom to finish the set, sending it to the clients with a wish for peace and enough light. I feel that line is also for myself. I add a few lines to my journal. Today I practiced holding the baby without back pain. I've understood why you must say the name out loud. Then I look a little longer at the sheet Aaliyah left, a row of empty boxes for signatures at the upcoming hearing, and I hear myself. I no longer tremble at the word court. I want to speak aloud my child's name, and her mother's name. When the desert wind slips through the crack in the door, carrying a warm dust smell, I place my hand on my child's chest, feel the steady breath, and know that my healing journey is not just win-lose. It is learning to be still, learning to call things by their right names, and learning to let the truth walk on its own legs. Slow, sure, but not retreating. The Bellagio night opened like a glitter-dusted stage. Hanging lights poured honey over the lobby. Brass drove a Latin glam beat. Cameras fired non-stop into clusters of blinking stars. I stood at the edge of the red carpet, fingers lightly holding the tiny wristband of my child that I always carry in my pocket, breathing 4 counts in, 4 counts out so the noise wouldn't swallow my voice. Evelyn stepped onto the dais, her silver evening gown slicing the lights, the mic crackling. The Whitfield family pledges $5 million to the IVF fund to let more families touch the miracle. Applause rose like waves. The cameras panned across her face, across Carter, across the shimmering signage. I once believed in miracles, then learned to believe in words read slowly. Aaliyah lightly touched my elbow, the prearranged signal. We stepped out of the shadows, went straight to the organizer's auxiliary mic. No jostling, no tussling. The background music dropped a notch. The sound of cameras fell into a deep well and then bounced back. Aaliyah lifted her head, her voice steady like stone steps. We also commit to bringing the truth to court tomorrow morning. The sealed contract will be opened. A shared held breath spread across the hall. I stood beside her, not closing my eyes, not looking for anyone in the crowd, only placing my hand on my chest to remember the rhythm. "You have no right to ruin a night of charity," Evelyn said quickly, the smile still on her lips but her eyes already sounding like broken glass. I turned toward the lens, my voice low and clear. "I'm not ruining anything, I'm just stating the schedule. Tomorrow morning at Clark County Family Court, the envelope will be opened in public." Aaliyah nodded, continuing as if placing a second stone. "The lab has confirmed the records. The embryo chain of custody is complete, and we have written documentation from the physician regarding the original consent. Those things will be reviewed by the court, not here." She didn't raise her voice, but the mic captured every sound precisely. A reporter raised a hand. "Are you saying there are falsified documents?" Aaliyah didn't take the bait. "The court will decide. Tonight, we are only announcing that the truth will be placed on the right table." Carter took half a step toward us, as if wanting to block, as if wanting to plead. I looked at him for a moment. Saw in his eyes the man at the Bellagio that year, who handed me medical tape because the camera was heavy, and a son caught in the spiderweb of family history. "Tomorrow," I said to him, "if you are a father, you will hear your child's name read correctly, and the name of her mother." He pressed his lips. He neither nodded nor shook his head. In the left corner, Sloan signaled the PR team to lower the music. The brass fell to midair, leaving a space enough for the words to stand upright. A group of guests whispered, "Unseal, unseal." Others raised phones to live stream. the comment stream running fast like lights along the strip. I thought of Riley printing logs, Boone laying out the timeline, Dr. Shah handwriting a concise and clear line of confirmation. All of those hands were standing by the microphone with me, in a way no one could see. Evelyn lost her composure for a beat, her voice half a tone higher. The documents are sealed. No one is. The unfinished sentence snagged on the lens. I did not answer. Aaliyah closed with a soft lock. We respect charity, and we respect the law more. See you at court, 9 a.m. She dipped her head slightly, her hand on my back. A warm, let's go, beat. We stepped back, giving the stage back to the lights. Behind us, the brass swelled again, but the crowd had split into two streams. One still swaying to the music, one following us with questioning eyes. I heard the cameras keep firing, but this time, I didn't feel fear each time I was in the frame. Out in the cool, stone-floored corridor, I leaned back for a few seconds and opened my phone. A message from Boone. Ring Clip Plus, the notary's death certificate, are ready. Riley sent a photo of the line Embryo Dish ID WFT-332 printed sharply. Aaliyah texted, "Sleep early, read slowly tomorrow." I tucked the phone into my pocket, gripped the tiny wristband once more. Inside the hall, they were still talking about miracles and legacy. Out here, I thought about calling things by their right names, signing in the right places, and going at the right time to the right room. I turned back one last time, looking at the clusters of lights reflected on the floor like a bright river. "Tomorrow," I said very softly, as if to myself and to the child sleeping at home. "Mom will read your name out loud, and your mother's name." Then I walked away, unhurried, letting the rhythm of my shoes blend with my heart now steady. Each beat is an answer, each step a page being opened. The cry of "All rise" rang out. The entire courtroom at the Clark County Family Court stood up at once, chairs scraping the floor softly like a wave. I stood too, one hand keeping my breath steady, the other touching the edge of the file folder worn from being held too much. The taut music in my head then settled as the clerk read evenly. "The 8th Judicial District Court is now in session. Honorable Judge Rosalind Park presiding." The gavel struck a short, firm blow as if resetting order for the room and for my heart. Aaliyah took half a step toward the lectern, her voice warm, neither high nor low. "Your Honor, we move to unseal the surrogacy contract upon which the respondents rely to separate mother and child." I saw Evelyn lean slightly to say something to the lawyer beside her. Carter looked down at his hands, his nails pressing into the folds of skin. Judge Park glanced through the file very quickly, nodded lightly. "Motion granted. Clerk, unseal and publish to both parties." The whole room seemed to have been waiting for this exact moment. I clearly heard the swish of the envelope being opened. The projector gave a single click, and light swept across the screen. Appearing before everyone's eyes was a large, sharp heading. The clinic's letterhead, a barcode in the upper right corner, Dr. Shah's handwritten signature and clear timestamps. The line in the middle of the page was like a calm answer. Intended parents, Maya Hernandez and Carter Whitfield. The surrogacy section boxed N.A., not applicable. I felt my shoulders drop half a notch, my throat suddenly tasting cool like cold water. Aaliyah didn't look at me, but the hand she placed on the file folder was enough to say, "Just breathe." Riley was called up, still with the voice that had reassured me amid the smell of alcohol in the lab. "Embryo chain of custody, WFT-332. Barcode scanned 3 times per shift, signed by 2 technicians and 1 physician, all mapping to Maya Hernandez and Carter Whitfield. No Sloan's name, no surrogacy provision was issued from the lab. Each word drove a small nail into the floor, keeping the path straight from slipping. I looked at the sequence WFT-332 on the screen and remembered the cold of stainless steel the day I stood with Aaliyah. Then my hands trembled. Now they did not. Dr. Shah stood at the next lectern, eyes gentle but firm. The document submitted by the respondents was not issued by us. My signature was redigitized. The pen stroke is not that of a human hand. Metadata shows that document was created 3 months after the day I actually signed. She placed an additional short attestation, blue ink slanting evenly. The respondents murmured. Someone coughed lightly as if to cut off the flow of evidence, but the current of truth had already begun to run, and trying to dam it only made it clearer. Aaliyah brought up the second screen. Ring camera 3:12 a.m. at the Whitfield garage. The black and white clip played, Evelyn carrying a thick stack of documents straight down to the cellar, her silhouette scraping across the frame. That is a draft. Evelyn sprang up, voice flailing. Aaliyah did not change her tone. You sent a draft to strip a child from her mother? And cued a compensation payment into Maya's account to set up a legal trap? I heard the word trap drop like a stone, not loud, but heavy. Carter raised a hand to cover his face, his voice slipping through his fingers. Mom said it was only to protect the brand. Babe, I'm sorry. He turned to me, the apology snagging somewhere in his throat. I said nothing, only looked straight at the screen where my name stood next to my child's. Judge Park leaned back slightly, turning 2 more pages, her eyes missing no detail. She invited the clerk to read a summary. Transfers of compensation tagged with the memo gestational services, even though no such agreement existed. A draft pre-birth order that was never filed. A notary seal belonging to someone who died 2 years ago. I thought of Boone and the death certificate he printed and set on the hood of the car at Red Rock. The desert is parched, but the truth does not thirst. It arrives when it must. The ruling was read without fanfare, but each sentence set a milepost. 1. Establish Maya Hernandez as the parent under the law, with full legal and physical decision-making and custody. 2. A no-contact order against Evelyn and Sloan for 3 years, unless otherwise ordered by the court. 3. Sanctions for submitting falsified documents. Refer the file to the prosecutor for forgery and unlawful interference with parental rights. 4. The Whitfield Foundation must publicly apologize and contribute to a legal aid fund for women facing similar disputes. I heard each period fall to the floor, not the sound of heaviness, but of things returning to their rightful shelves. The gavel closed the hearing. The room stilled for a beat. Then whispers rose like wind through leaves. Aaliyah turned to me, didn't hug, only said softly, "The court's part is done. The rest is to live well." I nodded, tears rising once and then receding. Riley lifted a hand in a small wave from the bench. Boone leaned against the wall, giving a single nod from just far enough. Carter stepped 1 step closer, not daring to come nearer. His eyes held both shame and relief, like someone who has just set down a handbag filled with stones. I said just loud enough, "As for you and the child, the court has read the names. The apology is up to you." He nodded, didn't argue. Stepping into the lobby, Las Vegas sunlight poured in through the glass roof, warm like a freshly sun-dried blanket. I opened my phone and saw messages from the mom and baby yoga class, from wedding clients asking how far along the retouching was, from Riley sending another log file to archive. Overhead, the sky was clear like an unwritten page, and I knew I wouldn't need to write large, only correctly. In Nevada, under intended parent law, what has been signed and done is what stands, and the truth, though sealed, will, in the end, have its day to be opened. I hug the file folder to my chest like I hugged my child on the NICU night, not out of fear of losing, but out of gratitude. I took a long breath, exhaled slowly, and stepped down the stairs, hearing a small music rise inside me. Not a noisy victory song, but the sound of a heart that has steadied. Each beat a signature, each beat a name read correctly. Afternoon in the Henderson Park. The desert wind blows lightly across the freshly watered lawn, the smell of hot dog from a street cart mingling with the sound of children laughing. I hold my child, rest my chin on milk-scented hair, and feel my chest peaceful as if no storm had ever passed. Best revenge, live well. I have reopened the studio. Small, warm yellow lights, walls displaying family frames, imperfect but sincere. Shirts a little wrinkled, hair a little messy, but eyes straightforward. I photograph mothers holding their children after long days, fathers who know how to apologize and relearn how to carry, children laughing hard because they are called by the right name. My child also grows up among those photos, with the truth right on the tip of the tongue, and a surname no one can steal. Because there was a day the court read it aloud, and we stood there to hear. On the night of the 4th of July, fireworks burst across the Las Vegas sky like glowing cacti. I place my child in the stroller, look up as ribbons of color explode, and then fall slowly like tissue paper. Amid the cheers, I whisper, "You get to grow up in your own name and in your mother's name." The rest, anger, fear, are left behind, like fireworks smoke dissolving into the warm wind. Thank you for coming with me this far, for sitting quietly to hear the pages speak, and a heart learn calm. This is Revenge and Resolve, where we answer pain with kindness and restore justice with the right terms. If you believe a contract cannot be stronger than motherhood and the law, please leave a comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, so the story reaches those who need it. Each of your clicks is a hand laid gently on the shoulder of someone who is trembling. See you in the next episode when we continue to call our names correctly and live well.